And a good Tuesday to you, my subjects. Happy weekly reset to our fellow American viewers, and soon to be happy weekly reset to our European viewers. Today is also the 426th recurrence of the burning of the relics of Saint Sava in Belgrade on the Vrasar plateau by the Ottoman Grand Vizier Sinan Pasha. The site of this incineration grew out to be the location of the Church of Saint Sava, one of the largest Orthodox churches in the world. Eisen. This information is useless. I do not feel smarter at all after having learned of this. Well, that is because today is the day that we talk about PvP. So I wanted to stay in theme for the subject we are about to go over. Now, as you know, I'm not usually talking about PvP too much. However, this is a big patch that is about to come in 9.1, and Blizzard is applying some pretty interesting changes to PvP. Yes, there are some, balance changing and small numbers being tuned, but the real interesting stuff is in the brand new abilities that Blizzard is adding to PvP. There is some, I would say, aptly positioned spring cleaning going on when it comes to PvP. For the smaller changes, the more minor changes, Blizzard is basically removing some of the talents for PvP and adding new ones. For example, you have things like your Demon Hunter's Glimpse, which makes your Vengeful Retreat turn you immune to CC, as long as you are in flight of the Vengeful Retreat effect. Feral Druids, interestingly enough, since Feral Druids are pretty strong in PvP, are getting the Rip and Tear removed in favor of Wicked Claws, which is an even stronger healing reduction talent. Outlaw gets some pretty cool extra crowd control synergy, like Control is King, getting 15 seconds of Slice and Dice after a cheap shot, or generating energy after you kidney shot, as well as Float like a Butterfly, which makes your Restless Blades passive also affect evasion and feint. There is also the nerf to Subtlety Rogues, to Dagger in the Dark, basically nerfed by almost 50% in the range from 20 to 12 yards, and 50% in the damage, from 10% stacking 10 times to 5% more damage stacking 10 times. As well as going back to the healing reduction, this time given to Fury Warriors, who gain Slaughterhouse as their new talent, which is effectively just a healing reduction tied to your Rampage. The cool stuff, though, is in the new abilities being added. Interestingly enough, a couple of these abilities are going to be given to Guardian Druid. Guardian Druid is not exactly what you think of when you're talking about very popular and used specs for PvP. Tanks in general have not been a very popular spec in PvP. You have had over time, sometimes, certain tank specs that made it through, particularly Arena, and became pretty annoying to deal with. We have gotten even nerfs centered around some of these specs, like Protection Paladin. Generally, due to the very high damage of a Protection Paladin, they somehow managed to sneak in Arena compositions, sometimes even replacing a Holy Paladin, because the healing of Protection was so insane that they could just replace a healer, except they were 4 times as tanky. Whereas Guardian Druid wasn't at that level, really, but they do get some pretty cool additions. Emerald Slumber. Embrace the Emerald Dream, causing you to enter a deep slumber. While sleeping, all of your cooldowns recover 400% faster, and allies within 40 yards are healed over 8 seconds, and direct damage taken may awaken you. This, to put this into simpler numbers, is a 40-second cooldown reduction on your other abilities spread over 8 seconds. You get 32-second cooldown reduction plus the 8-second channel. Now, first of all, the tooltip lies, because while sleeping, all of your cooldowns recover 400% faster, except for Emerald Slumber, which is one of your cooldowns. As soon as you use this ability, it goes on cooldown, but it's not reduced by this effect. So the 2-minute cooldown of this ability remains the same. All your other stuff gets reduced by 40 seconds in total once the channel is over. It's a pretty cool ability, it's a pretty cool effect. Then again, Guardian Druids are not some sort of fire mage with 4 to 5 pretty strong cooldowns that they can chain together, like Combustion and Shifting Power and all of their charges of Fire Blast and Phoenix Flames and all that sort of stuff. But it is pretty cool. The other cool ability that Guardian Druid has been given is Grove Protection. This is some sort of smoke bomb on steroids. So smoke bomb was the ability that rogues got in Wrath of the Lich King, and then it was changed, I think in Mists, it was changed to give them also the damage reduction, and then it could also be used in PvE. So it turned into a legitimate raid cooldown, external, that you would plan amongst all the other healer CDs. It was 20% damage reduction at first for 5 seconds, and then it was nerfed to 10% damage reduction, and then it was removed, as well as, of course, turning into a PvP-only talent after. This one is essentially a mutated version of Smoke Bomb. It loses the breaking of line of sight from Smoke Bomb, but it doubles the original damage reduction from the Smoke Bomb, from 20 to 40%. Also, it lasts for 8 seconds, which is more than the 5 seconds of Smoke Bomb, and it has a 1 minute cooldown, which is also lower than a Smoke Bomb. It is pretty cool because it is giving a tank a way to give a very powerful external cooldown to one of your allies. It doesn't often happen. When you see a tank and you think of Shield Wall, Last Stand, Metamorphosis, Guardian of the Ancient Kings, those are all personal defensives. There is no way for you to help your buddies. You have some extra things like Blessing of Protection that could be used. Maybe you have Intervene from a warrior, Blessing of Sacrifice as well is sort of working that same way, but this one is pretty powerful. 1 minute cooldown for a 40% damage reduction to a ranged character, for example a Fire Mage, unloading their burst, or maybe a Destruction Warlock, an Elemental Shaman. They pin down their target, it's CC'd, or maybe it already used its own defensive, and you as a Guardian Druid can help them out by using this Growth Protection ability. This one definitely has more uses than the previous one, the Eternal Slumber effect that Guardian Druids can use. But now onto the actual DPS specs, so onto the actual interesting stuff. For these classes and specs, we have Mage. Yes, people are gonna get triggered because Mage is basically the only class that gets all of its specs gifted with a new shiny ability. So again, Mage gets preferential treatment by Blizzard. Arcane gets Arcanosphere, which is essentially a Kamehameha thrown by the Arcane Mage after a 4-second channel. Now the damage is very high because it's 120 spell power multiplied by 4. We are talking about 480% spell power. That is basically the equivalent of getting 2 aim shots in the face, more or less. And also the interesting thing about this ability is the knockback. The sphere passes through barriers, knocking enemies back and dealing up to that amount of arcane damage. The interesting part is also the uses you can have in PvP in Battlegrounds, because one of the first things that people are going to think when they look at this, a very long range, very long running AoE ability that's going to knock everyone back, and they're going to think about the bridge in Eye of the Storm. What happens when you run, you just tunnel mid in Eye of the Storm, and you have a couple of Arcane Mages in your group, and they just cast Arcanosphere to the end of the other side of the bridge. What's going to happen to the entire raid of the enemy when 2 Arcanospheres are going to run by? So that's going to be pretty interesting. I am sure that's going to sprout quite a good amount of meme compilations of Arcanospheres used in hilarious situations with knockbacks in PvP. The other 2 mage specs get something more thematic and more reminiscent of other abilities. For Fire Mage, you have Ring of Fire. Summons a fire ring for 8 seconds at the target location. Enemies entering the ring burn for 24% of their total health. So effectively, it's a reverse Shade of Aran's Ring of Fire. With Shade of Aran, you were targeted with a ring around you, a ring of fire around you, and if you went out of the ring, you were going to have a bad time. This one is the opposite. You're going to cast a fire ring, and if you enter the fire ring, you're going to have a bad time. Now, the damage is not that high because it's 24% of their total health if it's hitting only one target. So, you know, in things like arenas, it's not going to be that strong when you can only hit 2, maybe 3 targets very hardly, very rarely. You're also going to find 3 of them all clamped up on each other. So it's not as powerful there. In AoE situations, though, in PvP, in Battlegrounds, where it's going to be a crowd, 5, 6, 7, 8 targets, this is going to be a very good control ability. Another good control ability, which might actually just be a meme, but it's going to be pretty interesting to see how it works, is Ice Wall. A staple of RPG abilities in pretty much any game where there is a Frost Mage, a Water Mage, any type of Cold Mage, they're going to get some sort of Ice Wall. Conjures an Ice Wall 30 yards long that obstructs line of sight. The wall has 40% of your max HP and lasts 15 seconds. You know, right now, you're going to get, what, 40k HP, more or less. So this thing is going to get 17k or so HP when you pull it off. It is also important that it's also obstructing line of sight. So for very short, it can also function as some sort of immunity for you. Minus the dots already on you. As long as you pull this down, you're going to be immune to damage for a while before people can go past it. It is, of course, another good control ability, just like the Fire Ring. This one can have better uses in Arena compared to the Ring of Fire, because this one also has a line of sight element to the ability, so particularly to break the line of sight from a DPS to a healer. In Arena, this can be used particularly because some of the most powerful healers do not have ways to go past this wall. You have Paladins that can't go past this one, you have Shamans that can't go past this one. You would need things like a Night Phase Soul Shape to blink past this. You can't use a Door of Shadows as a Ventir because you don't have the target on the ground past the ice wall because it's going to be out of line of sight. Whereas Soul Shape is automatic, it's just a blink forward, so you will be able to go past this wall as a Night Fae player, but not as a Ventir, not as a Necrolord, not as a Paladin or Shaman, not as a Mistweaver Monk either, unless you have your teleport already set up past the ice wall. So it can be pretty good in Arena, and of course it can be very powerful in Battlegrounds because breaking line of sight, even for just a few seconds, even for just, the time for players to realize there is an ice wall and they need to target it down, it's going to give you some breathing room. Or just the time you need to focus down whoever you just split away from the rest of the group with the ice wall. Rogue, as a whole, gets only one ability, which is Destructive Mirage. Distract slows affected enemies by 30% and creates a mirage that follows an enemy for 8 seconds. Reactivate Distract to teleport to your Mirage location. Now, the first thing to point out is that effectively this is giving Rogue another 30-second cooldown close gap ability, dash, teleport ability, because Distract has a 30-second cooldown. So as long as you can reliably use it every 30 seconds to target an enemy, you will always be able to get a reliable teleport to that enemy, at least for the next 8 seconds. Now, when you use it on like 4 enemies at the same time, there is only going to be one image targeting the one who was closest to the center of your Distract. So there is always going to be just one Distract shadow that you can follow with your teleport. By default, it can just be pretty good, simply because it gives Rogue another mobility option for them. And as a melee, realistically speaking, you kind of always want more movement options. Of course, Rogues are already pretty rich in them. They're not a poor-ass Retribution Paladin, but it might still be very good. Now, the last of the changes is for Warlock. Of course, right after Mage, the next preferential treatment goes to the other baby of Blizzard, which is Warlock, starting with the more confusing one, which is for Demonology Warlock, Fell Obelisk. Now, it looks very cool. Of course, it looks completely broken in PvE, which is why it exists in PvP. Summon a Fell Obelisk with 5% of your max HP, empowers you and your minions within 40 yards, increasing attack speed by 20% and reducing the cast time of your spells by 20% for 15 seconds on a 45-second cooldown. Obviously, this is made with the strategic element in mind. The fact that it has 40-yard range, so it can reach very far, but the fact that it only has 5% of your max HP. So even as a demo lock, that is going to have no more than 3k HP. It dies in literally one hit. So the point is, obviously, you and your arena member or arena members are in front, facing the enemy, and you're going to pop this 20 yards behind you, so that even your ranged enemies, maybe a mage, maybe an elemental shaman, can't reach the obelisk while the obelisk is buffing you or your minions. The same can be said in Battlegrounds. There is the line of scrimmage on the battleground, maybe fighting for a flag. You can put the obelisk behind your line of fire, sort of like a reinforcement line, resupplying the army, so you put it in the back so it is safe from being attacked. It will require, though, some finesse in being able to use it properly, in being able to defend it from dying to literally just a sneeze from any enemy. What is going to be much easier to effectively use is going to be the Warlock ability, which is going to be available to all Warlocks. Conjure a Shadow Rift within a 10-yard radius at the target location, lasting for 2 seconds. Enemy players within the zone, when it expires, are teleported to your demonic circle. Now, this one, while still requiring finesse to work, just like your Fell Obelisk, it's easier to pull off. It's just about whether or not you used your brain when you made this happen, because on a 30-yard range with a 10-yard radius of the circle, only taking 2 seconds to activate, many melee characters, many even ranged characters with more movement abilities are going to get hit by this. Unless they have a blink, basically, they're going to get hit by this. So it's all about where are you placing your demonic circle to make them pop out of. That's where the finesse comes in. How do you want to make it work? Maybe you are in the middle. To the left, there is the enemy healer, and in front of you, there is the melee DPS charging you. You could be placing your demonic circle all the way behind you, to your right, and then use Shadow Rift on the melee player. This way, the healer is going to be all the way to the left, and the melee player is going to be all the way to the right. That could be a thing. Maybe you simply want to push away the melee player, so you're just going to put your demonic circle all the way to the left next to his healer. Maybe you want to do the opposite. Maybe you're going to put the demonic circle on top of yourself and use the Shadow Rift on the healer to basically pull the healer in, almost as if you're using a death grip of a Death Knight. So there are some pretty interesting uses you can have with this Shadow Rift for defense or for offense. Do you want to pull in a squishy character? Someone that doesn't have a damage reduction, for example, a wall of any kind, or maybe do you want to push back someone trying to go for you or for one of your party members, arena members, or whatnot. Now, the last of these Warlock abilities is going to be Bonds of Fel. This is another one of these iconic abilities, although it's not that long ago that we saw this. This is the Gul'dan's Fight ability from Nighthold. Bonds of Fel is going to encircle enemy players with Bonds of Fel, snaring them by 50% for 6 seconds. If any target leaves the 8-yard radius of Bonds of Fel, they are going to deal 460% spell power fire damage to themselves, split amongst nearby enemies. Now, 460% is also very big, especially if it is used on a single target. Very, very high damage. The cooldown is also surprisingly very small, it's only 30 seconds. So every 30 seconds you can snare an enemy by 50% for 6 seconds, or multiple enemies by 50% for 6 seconds. This alone is already pretty good, just slowing them, controlling the battlefield. The extra added addition of the extra burst of damage is also pretty good. Now, what is more surprising is that this one is a Destruction special. Destruction is already pretty apt at bursting people down in PvP, at having pretty high amounts of burst, and this ability is just gonna help even more. I mean, technically speaking, you can take the Shadow Rift and the Bonds of Fel together as a Destruction Warlock. You can literally put down Bonds of Fel, pop and use all your cooldowns, and then use Shadow Rift on top of the guy with Bonds of Fel. He's gonna get teleported out of the Bonds of Fel and take the burst of damage from Bonds of Fel. Force him to trigger the ability with Shadow Rift Teleport. Now, outside of arenas, in battlegrounds, it is still good because the 50% slow in an 8 radius is good. In choke points, you know, it's good to control the fight. However, the damage is going to be much reduced because it's split damage, so 460% spell power split. As soon as when there is more than 4 enemy players being hit by Bonds of Fel, it starts doing, you know, negligible damage, so you're not going to use it for the damage in AoE situations. It's more of the control side of this ability. Now, I think all of these new extra additions are pretty cool. They're pretty flavorful and interesting. You do kind of feel a little bit sad because not many classes are getting these type of additions at the end of the day. It's basically all the Mage specs, and then the Warlock specs, and then Rogue, and then for some reason Guardian Druid out of nowhere. So the other classes aren't really getting any new shiny things, at least for now. There is no data mining so far suggesting any additional changes to these abilities, when it comes to the PvP ones at least. So, for today, we can stop here. That's all there is to say for all of these PvP changes for now. I'm assuming there's gonna be more eventually, as we go down the line on 9.1's PTR. Very likely less than the PvE changes, of course, but there should still be something more. We will see if it's as interesting as these new abilities. No, I don't think there is any need for you to subscribe today. This was a PvP related video. I don't want people subscribing on PvP day. I would feel dirty. Now, as I was saying, see you guys soon, and in the meantime, I need to go and hire a PvP expert to talk about this stuff.